I was adopted from Russia, lived in an orphanage for the first 18 months of my life, and then I was adopted by a family here in South Dakota. I grew up with your typical American family. My parents had talked to me about addiction being a disease that runs in families and things like that, and with my biological mother being an alcoholic and a drug addict, my parents had told me. So I knew the risks. I started drinking at the age of 11, and I just remember having this beer, and it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me. Actually, how I got started with drugs is I had surgery and I had a doctor prescribe opioids, and I was immediately addicted. There was a girl that I went to school with. Her mom had some sort of painkillers for a back problem or something, and she would just bring them to me. It went on for about 6 months, and then a couple years ago, I had surgery again. And I kind of casually mentioned it to my doctor that I had had some issues with opioids in the past, and my doctor was like, okay, I'll write you a small prescription. When the prescription ran out and I went back to my doctor, my doctor filled it a couple more times, and then they were like, we don't think you need this anymore. And that's when I started buying it off the street. And I remember one day I called my drug dealer and I was like, I need something stronger. And he was like, well, I have heroin and that's about it. I was like, great, give it to me. At that point, I had no will to live. I had no will to really do anything, and I was hooked. I used it one time, and for the next 2 years, I did it every day. My mom died, my best friend died, and then my grandma died. About a year after that, my husband died. And so in that year, it was just loss after loss. I didn't know who to turn to. I tried to do it on my own. I tried the cold turkey. I tried to stop. I wanted to stop, and I just couldn't. One day, I called, and I was like, hey, I need help. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next steps are, but I can't live like this anymore. And a week later, I went to inpatient treatment. I remember laying in the detox portion. I felt like I was dying. I felt like my body was on fire. I felt like I couldn't think straight. All I wanted was to get high. I had never wanted something so badly. I wouldn't wish that feeling in the way that it felt being in the detox part of it on anybody. I mean, it was horrible. Then I started going to groups, and I started hearing about other people who had been where I was. And I realized that while I felt so alone, it wasn't at all. There were people that knew what I was going through. There were people that had gotten better. And that was the first time in my life that anybody had acknowledged that it was a disease, that it wasn't something that I could just stop. It wasn't just a choice that I was making every day. So I was officially fired 10 days after I went to treatment. And I went to my therapist and I told him that I didn't think I could be there anymore because I couldn't afford it. It was when the Emily's Hope Scholarship was brought in, and they covered that payment of my insurance premium to allow my insurance to continue to pay for that final month that I was in treatment. So if I hadn't gotten the Emily's Hope Scholarship, I would have left. I would have left treatment, and I don't think I would have stayed sober. I think looking back at it now, the work that I did in that final few days there was life-changing. In the last year, I've lost 6 of my friends to drug overdoses. And a lot of it comes down to just treatment not being accessible, the care that they need not being accessible, and not knowing where to turn. I think so often when we talk about addiction, we're looking at each person as an addict, and I think it's time that we start looking at people as people, and to know that it could be, your brother, your sister, your neighbor, your doctor could be struggling with something, and knowing that there's programs whose sole purpose is to help people is truly life-changing.